I was curious how this might have your actual research and talking to a lot of people might have influenced your perspective on what's happening in 2021, to go to our unique question of the trends for 2021. What a surprise.
Well, I mean, I think there's a lot of interesting things. If you think about the way that this evolved this year, I think I see what I would say is a 3-phase process for most companies that were able to adapt completely to this distributed workforce. Obviously, there are companies that weren't fortunate enough to do that, and some of them have come up with additional or different ways to adapt, and then some haven't or won't make it because of the fact that face-to-face is just not a thing that's going to happen anytime soon. So I think if you think of it in 3 phases, there was that initial phase of how do I do work remotely distributed? How do I have the tools that you can actually manage to do those things, and collaborate with people and do meetings online and all those different things that we dealt with, and a little bit of how do I connect with my customer, but really the second phase was digital experience, because now everything is a digital experience, and so I have to figure out how I do that. And then I think what we are going into, and what some companies are in, and I think next year you're going to see a lot, is, okay, we bought a lot of technology, we did all these things that we had to do in a really quick way to make us able to survive, but how do we optimize that culture, that process, that technology? How do we make sure that we've adapted to what this really looks like in a more studied way? And so that's I think phase 3 is really that optimization, or how do I really take all those things and make them work together. And one of those things, for example, I think is I think what we're going to see, and I've started to see several companies that are coming down this path of the difference in how we deal with communications. In the past, communications were more driven by an application. So I communicate with my prospect or customer in the way that my Salesforce automation system does, or my customer service system does, or whatever. So the communication, just like the data in the back end, was siloed in one place and very limited, right? So this application does online forms and email, and then this one does, online chat and, whatever. So those are all controlled by the application. But what from your experience is, over the last 10 years, people have changed to the point of, I want to communicate the way I want to communicate, not the way you want to communicate. And if you don't do that, and I have lots of fun stories about some things that happened this year, like trying to communicate with a brokerage firm that only did phone, and yet they had no capacity to do phone. So they'd literally put you on hold for a continuous hold forever, except every 4 hours you'd get kicked off because your cell company wouldn't think you were doing something logical, and it would kill your signal. So they literally had made it impossible to communicate, because they had left themselves in a silo that they couldn't fulfill based on the changes in what happened, with business. So what I think you see now is change in the idea, platform. I hate that word, but we use it all the time. But platform, in a way that we have to think of platforms now as a Lego block way to solve a series of problems, right? And one of those, of course, is data. So now you have this consistent data layer behind that solves the data silo, and you have development tools, and you have security, and you have all these different sort of services that you have to have in a cloud platform. Well, now what you see is the emergence of a communication platform that sits inside of that cloud platform that ties all of these things together. So a communication platform with the APIs to actually enable you to communicate consistently through any channel that the customer chooses, through any of those different silos and yet tie back to a consistent platform across the business. So I think that's one of the biggest things that companies have tried to solve or are fighting to solve right now. And you see more and more companies start to think of themselves as that way. I mean, Twilio, for example, and others who now have this idea of the communication platform as a service that is going to be a big play in how the digital experience evolves, I think.